Right.
Okay,
All
welcome
right.
everybody. I'm Jonathan Harris, Director of Team to End AIDS. Also on the call is Christina Robinson, the team manager, Coach Chris Navin, and Coach Marsha Camosa, who will be talking to you about the training. But thank you for joining us for this, I know late in the season webinar about T2 and preparing you for the Tokyo Marathon. But I think we have a lot of good information that we can share with you that will help you with some final fundraising in this final push, as well as getting you ready for race weekends. Okay, we're going to talk to you about meeting the team behind T2, why you're running for AFC, the fundraising, and how you're helping the clients of the AIDS Foundation Chicago, the training that you should have been doing up until now, and the final few weeks leading up to race weekend, getting specific race prep tips for Tokyo, and then taking any questions that you might have. So as I said earlier, I'm Jonathan Harris, Director of Team to End AIDS.
And I am Christina Robinson, team manager for Team to End AIDS. I'm also known as the momager, as all of my athletes are my little hens, little baby chicks. So we help with fundraising and communications. We are both experienced marathoners, so if you have questions about marathons, we're happy to help. But our main roles are for fundraising and communications.
So the mission of Team to End AIDS is to help improve the lives of those who are living with or vulnerable to HIV and AIDS by raising critical funds to support the programs of the AIDS Foundation Chicago. We use endurance sports to raise awareness, reduce stigma, empower our athletes, and encourage action to create health equity across Chicago. We are not federally funded. The funds that are raised are going to the unrestricted area, so wherever the greatest need is for the foundation and our clients. But we are not receiving any federal funds through T2. So for more than 40 years, the AIDS Foundation has made a big difference in the lives of people living with HIV in Illinois and across the nation. The mission of the AIDS Foundation is to mobilize communities to create equity and justice for people living with and vulnerable to HIV and related chronic diseases, with the vision of people living with HIV or chronic conditions will thrive and there will be no new cases, something that we call getting to zero, that we're striving to achieve. And Christina will talk about that in a few minutes. We have a 40th anniversary video that we would like to show you at this time.
A mystery disease known as the gay plague.
Preventing people from contracting the full disease.
The problem of adequate care for AIDS patients.
Right, because the FDA and the NIH have to tell a dying...
We've exposed the narrative that we were supposed to have been dead. We're still living. We've outlived those tactics and those narratives that said we wouldn't survive. We have survived.
It was really hard. I went to several funerals in the early days of patients and then occasionally of friends in the community, and there were just too many.
Actually help people to die with dignity, which is a very different message than now when we are helping people to thrive.
Because I was in my active addiction, none of that registered. I didn't know anything about HIV because when I left the world in '85, it was only affecting gay men. There was no education about what this meant for me as a mother or as a woman, none of that.
They both had to be identified male. Now here I am with all of this. And I told them, look, what does the document say? Let's go with the documentation. And they took me in. And that was my first chance of getting the supportive stuff that I needed.
Getting diagnosed with HIV was a whole nother trauma. So nonetheless, it was difficult to reach out for emotional support because there weren't people who looked like me, and also the stigma of mental health in the Black community.
So this is my friend John Cockrell, who passed away in September of 1988, September 11th, told me that I needed to continue to fight the fight
And it's important to say that Ron Sable was a dedicated, active member of the gay community. He gave us credibility to build on what I think are the key principles for HIV care based on dignity and human rights.
Part of Getting to Zero Illinois is about ending the HIV epidemic for all populations.
Legislators sometimes need a quick 101 on what does it look like now in the advancements around medication and treatment, what it looks like for folks having access issues, and like the greater scheme of what makes HIV continue today.
AFC's role in that, just understanding that cultural competency is a necessity.
And so Getting to Zero really works in several different priorities, making sure that there is employment, making sure that there is housing, making sure that we are destigmatizing people.
Without housing, clients cannot take care of their mental health. They cannot take care of their HIV. They cannot address their substance use. So housing is healthcare.
Whether it's us talking about the new cohort of older adults that are the longest that have lived with HIV and what it looks like to age, I would say gracefully.
I got diagnosed in March 40 years ago. So what's impactful now and powerful for me is that 40 years they took a risk that trying to figure out what they needed to do.
That I survived a full-blown AIDS diagnosis, and I'm still here.
It's really a partnership. Getting to Zero Illinois is a partnership between the Chicago Department of Public Health, AFC, and the Illinois Department of Public Health. And it is to make sure that we are getting to zero, functional zero, meaning less than 100 new infections every year.
We've also managed to decriminalize HIV, one of the few states that have been able to do that. And I think that's a monumental one when we think about the stigma around HIV.
We're so proud to celebrate AFC's 40th anniversary, and I can't believe that I've been part of AFC for really half of that. There are so many ways that folks can get involved, and one way, of course, is for folks to donate. Another is for folks to share their memories of AIDS Foundation over the years. What's moved you? What's excited you? What's scared you? How have we helped you? How have we changed the way you think about the HIV epidemic and housing and homelessness?
We're in a terrible new era of discrimination against trans individuals, against the LGBTQ community, against diversity, equity, and inclusion, against reproductive justice. This is a moment now where the advocacy and the community consolidation of AIDS Foundation of Chicago is going to be invaluable and imperative as we go forward.
So we premiered that video at the 40th gala, AFC's 40th gala last year. So we are now in our 41st year. Here are some infographics. I know it might be hard to read, but these are some infographics that we can share with you that you can then share with your donors to show more about the work that AFC is doing. So for example, over 90% of Ryan White care clients are virally suppressed. And that means that their viral load in their body is low enough that they can't transmit HIV sexually to their partners. We've served over 8,894 individuals. We have advocates who we'd have something called Advocacy Day, and they go down to Springfield and talk about what we need to get passed in the House and the Senate, in the state. So these are some great infographics that we can share with you. We can move to the next slide, Coach. And so I talked a little bit about getting to zero. They talked about it in the video. So undetectable means untransmittable is U equals U, and that's where they cannot transmit HIV sexually to their partners. We're working on an initiative called Getting to Zero Illinois, and that that is to get Illinois to 0 new cases of HIV by the year 2030. And the way we're going to do that is increase the number of people who are on their HIV meds, make sure that they can get an undetectable viral load, and then also increase the number of people who are on PrEP, which is a medication that prevents the contraction of HIV. So it's a very exciting program, and our funds raised by T2 athletes go to the Getting to Zero Illinois program. That's one of the unrestricted funds that we can help donate towards. So we encourage you to talk about getting to zero when you are talking to your donors.
So there's lots of different ways to be successful at your fundraising. I know sometimes this often is the most stressful part of being on a charity team. There's hundreds of miles that you're running in preparation of your marathon, but a lot of times the fundraising seems to be more intimidating, and that's where Christina and I are here to help you. And it's as simple as asking friends and partners. There's a lot of corporate matching opportunities if you work for a company that matches, or if any of your donors have matching opportunities. That's a great way to double a donation. We've also talked to our athletes in the past about turning a hobby, something that they're already doing, like knitting or cooking or drink making, into something that's a monetary donation. If it happens to be a milestone birthday year for you, or you have a birthday coming up, you could ask people to make a donation. So there's lots of different ways to achieve the goal of the $4,000 that you're raising for T2 in the Tokyo Marathon.
So we encourage you to use multiple channels to help your efforts. So for example, you can post on social media, on Facebook or Instagram, even TikTok. We have some athletes who do TikTok. And then also emails. If you look at the bottom of this slide, you'll see this is a stat from, and it's probably old now, but we use it so frequently. If you send 0 emails, you might raise $87.44. If you send 1 to 15 emails, you could earn $705. And if you send 15 or more emails, you could earn $1,700. So baby steps in your fundraising and baby steps with your emails. We encourage you to request donations often. So do so, you could do fundraising Friday, or, highlight the running that you're doing, your training. I'm doing 20 miles this week, donate $20. And something that I like to remind our athletes is that if someone hasn't donated yet, that doesn't mean they don't want to. It just means that they forgot. So that your email might have gone to the bottom of their inbox. So send them another message. And Jonathan touched on this already, but corporate matching is a great way to double the donations you've already received. If your friend works for a company that offers corporate matching, talk to your friend about that and make sure that they take advantage of that. So that is it for fundraising and for communications and AFC. If you have questions about that, you can put it in the chat, or you can contact us about that.
All right. Well, thank you, Jonathan and Christina. I'm going to talk a little bit about the training. Tokyo is coming up very, very quickly. So we're in the final weeks of training, hitting the peak mileage and whatnot. But there's a lot of things that you can do at this point to make sure you get prepared so that you can master the marathon. And so a little bit about me as background for those who don't know, but I'm the head coach for the team. I've been the head coach, I think now for over a decade, I think with the team for almost 15 years. And I've done a large number of races, all different types of endurance sports, well over 40 marathons, over 140 triathlons. But I'm a full-time coach, so I do a lot of different things, including running a metabolic testing lab that helps me guide athletes on how to, execute your training and race day more successfully. And obviously, I work with all of our athletes, but I use a lot of different tools. So I know while we do provide one main training plan for each race, a lot of our athletes use other tools. And so if you guys have questions about your own training, regardless of which training plan you're following, just know that I'm a resource here for the team. I also have made a dedicated landing page for kind of marathon tips in general. So anything I mentioned today, content, videos, worksheets, stuff like that, is all on a dedicated web page that you can go to at 4starendurance.com/marathon. So just in case I go through something a little too quick and you miss it, you'll be able to find everything on there, including this recording. We'll post that up here on that page as well. But what I'm going to go through is talking about the Tokyo Marathon a little bit, but I'm going to turn it over to Coach Marcia actually to give you some real first-person tidbits from running Tokyo just recently. And so you'll get some insider tips from Coach Marcia. I'll cover more of the high-level stuff. I know a lot of you doing Tokyo with us are completing or going towards completing all of the World Marathon Majors. So this is a big step in that direction. So with that, like I said, I'll talk about the training, also give you some fueling and hydration tips, and then turn it over to Marcia to go over the Tokyo specific final tips. And if you're not familiar, T2 now does have a large number, almost all of the World Marathon Majors. So if you haven't done Sydney, Berlin, Chicago, New York, Tokyo coming up, obviously, and Cape Town next year, it will be a World Marathon Major, hopefully. So we'll have entries into that as well. So I'm hoping to be there in Cape Town next year, and hopefully I'll see some of you there as well, potentially. Here's a quick rundown of all the marathon majors. As the series has grown, I started adding more. I'm not going to go through this in too much detail, but the one thing to make note of is the elevation gain of Tokyo. You'll notice it's only 198 feet of elevation gain, which is technically less than Berlin and Chicago, which are notoriously known as some of the flattest courses, London as well. So technically, Tokyo is the fastest, or at least the flattest World Marathon Major out there. And then obviously Cape Town's getting added and Shanghai's getting added as well. So Shanghai might actually take the place of Tokyo being the flattest course, but that's to be determined. That'll be potentially the year after this year. So it'll become a major. All right. So what I'm going to talk about real quick, one is the final training. So one of the biggest things you can do from here on out is really getting race specific with your final training. So thinking about doing what we call a negative split to your long runs. And this photo is of me running Chicago this past year. And the little cutout on the bottom there is actually a color graph of my heart rate during the marathon to demonstrate what a negative split should look like from a heart rate perspective. I sometimes call it running the rainbow because you want to start in a easy effort level. We normally call it zone 2 or zone 3, the blue or green. And then as you start running, hopefully a little bit faster in the second half of the race, only then is when you want to start creeping up higher and higher through that yellow or orange zone into the red zone. So if you're using kind of like a color-coded heart rate, pacing plan, we actually print that on the T2 jerseys on the front. So if you notice, you have our rainbow colors on our jersey. That's your pacing plan. Just run those colors: blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. The other thing that you can do, so try to do that during your long runs, especially from here on out, so your final runs. The other thing is make sure you're getting the mileage in. I know in the wintertime for a lot of us here in the northern hemispheres, or cities in the northern hemispheres, we've got ice and snow on the ground, so maybe we haven't been getting the same mileage that we normally get in training for a marathon. So the one base thing that you should be doing from here on out is make sure you're getting 26.2 miles in a week. That is usually the recommendation as you're building towards your peak training. It doesn't matter if you really get a 20-mile run in, as long as you get over 20 miles in for the whole week. And that's what really adapts your body to the pounding that you're going to be doing on one day. If you can get 26.2 miles covered in a week, you're getting your body ready to do 26.2 miles in a day. But the consistency of that is what's important. So really this week, next week, week after, try to get at least that 26.2 miles in. Some of you might be well above that, I realize, but that for someone who might be a little bit behind or training in the winter is always a good goal to shoot for. The other thing, I focus a lot on kind of the sports science side of looking at your metabolism as you run to teach people how to pace smarter. And that's what we call metabolic efficiency. And that's just helping you to realize that at running at lower intensities, your body burns more fat as a fuel source. At higher intensities, you burn more carbs. So you want a lot of your runs to be at those lower intensities so that you can actually continue to lose a little bit of body fat heading into race day. The less weight you're carrying with you, the better. So regardless of any weight loss goals or not, the general idea is get your body used to running on fat as a fuel source so that you don't bonk when you hit the later stages. I usually use the metric. I know for me, when I did my first marathon, for example, I bonked pretty hard around mile 18 to 20. And it was only years later that I understood the science of running and realized that if you ran at your threshold, like that comfortably hard pace, and you looked at the average population, most people would bonk on race day at mile 18 and a half. And you don't want to do that. That's why they say the wall is at mile 20 of the marathon. So the goal is pace smart, pace easy, so that you can finish strong. I'm not going to go through too much more of the details. We actually have a separate presentation on all of this, but that is kind of the main tip in terms of your final bit of training. And then I'll talk more here about race day as well. So in terms of finishing strong, whether it's your final training runs or race day, it really comes down to three things: fueling, getting the energy your body needs; hydrating to make sure you're not getting dehydrated; and then pacing to make sure you're not going out too aggressively. So a general mantra I like to have, and this is an example of what you might see in Tokyo at the aid stations. If you are feeling good as you're running, make sure you just stay on top of the hydration. They have Pocari Sweat is their hydration product. You get electrolytes, you get sugar. So if you keep that sugar, you keep the hydration, you keep the electrolytes going in, you'll be able to hold your pace. But if you start feeling cranky, that's the time when your body needs more sugar. So get a Snickers bar, get something in your body so that you can get that energy back up. So try to become really cognizant in the later stages of the race on how you're feeling and what your mood is like, because that is a sign, a red flag or a green flag as to how you're doing race-wise. So even if you realize, hey, I've never heard of this Pocari Sweat thing, you will probably want to use it on race day. So if you can, try to train with it on the final days of training. You can buy it at Walmart. You can buy it at Amazon. You can get it online in a powder form. I actually have a stack of it here next to me in powder form. And if anyone here in Chicago wants a sample, let me know. I can get it to you. But you can order it pretty easily. You can find it, use it, get your body used to it. So it's not something new on race day. You always also want to make sure, I know some of you have done lots of marathons. It might not be your first one, but if you haven't done one in a while, realize that you always want to be consuming not just water. You want to always get electrolytes, sugar, and water in. Keep the osmolality, the concentration of everything consistent. So your body can absorb more sugar when you're taking in hydration. It can absorb more electrolytes when you're getting in that hydration and when you're getting in that sugar. So if you go to the aid station and maybe you take a gel of your own, chase it with some water. That will just help with the absorption. If you only drink water, and let's say Tokyo ends up being a little bit warmer, right? It isn't a generally hot and humid environment. The time of year is ideal. Actually, Tokyo, I just saw a published study that was done on all the marathon majors of which marathon major is scheduled on the most optimal time of year for their environment. And Tokyo is actually the most optimal. But it will generally not be too cold. It won't be too hot. But if you only drink water, you can get hyponatremic, especially if you're sweating a lot. If you're just drinking water and you're diluting your blood sodium. So always be balanced. Sugar, electrolytes, water. Also review the aid stations. If you're familiar with races in the US, Chicago, New York, some of these marathon majors have aid stations every mile. Some of the international ones do not. It might be every 5K. I did see that I think the aid stations are getting updated slightly from last year to this year. I don't know if that's officially in the participant guide, but look over the details you get in the last couple of weeks, usually about 2 or 3 weeks before race day. They might post some more detail on that. So just make sure it's not going to be Gatorade. I know I have it here on the side, so Pocari Sweat. And you can always do the urine check during the race. If you need to run to a porta potty, make sure your urine is a nice yellowish color, not getting too dark. All right, but that's enough on hydration. The other thing, if you haven't done a marathon more recently, if you look at all the different brands of sports nutrition products out there, generally the goal for most athletes going 3+ hours, which is most of us, or around the 3-hour point or just under, is to get more carbs in per hour as you go longer. So this has changed a lot in terms of sports science over the last 10 years. We used to recommend just like 30 to 50 grams of carbs an hour, but now most products are using mixed sugar sources, and they're finding from a sports performance standpoint, you can do much better regardless of your pace when you start taking in up to 90 grams of carbs per hour when you're going longer in distance. So over 2 hours, you might only do 60 grams, but over 3 hours, you want to start getting 90 grams of carbs in per hour. And at the elite level, we're even having athletes do 120 or more. And that can come from, the Pocari Sweat. It can come from gels. It can come from anything, solids as well. So just try to plan that out over your last couple big long runs to get used to what you're going to do on race day. Now, a couple final fueling tips. Pre-race, think about race morning too. If you're in a foreign country you're not used to and you don't know what products they have, what breakfast options they have, maybe you want to bring something that you're used to. And if that's going to be the case, make sure you're practicing with that the final couple of weeks of training. I sometimes try to look for a meal replacement shake or a bar, like something you can buy at convenience stores, maybe even internationally, or do something simple, bagel, peanut butter, banana, and think of, okay, if you know the race start time, work backwards from there and make sure race morning, you do what I call the 3-2-1 taper, or if you're getting up even earlier, the 5-4-3-2-1 taper, which basically means, roughly 4 or 5 hours before the race, you can get a nice big breakfast, 500 calories or more. But if you're waking up only 3 hours before you start running, you might not be able to digest that much. So take about 300 calories in 3 hours before, and then 200 calories 2 hours before, and then the final 100 calories about 1 hour before the race. That way you're getting in a total of about 600 calories in an easily digestible manner to top off before you start running. And I recommend trying to get used to this in your final training runs as well. Just get it dialed in. And then during the race, the general guideline these days, you can either do it by body weight. So usually we say eat the amount of calories equal to your body weight as a minimum up to twice. So 100 calories if you weigh 100 pounds, 200 calories if you weigh 200 pounds, but up to twice that much. So that would mean 400 calories for a 200-pound athlete. The other simpler math that I like to use is just one gel every 5K. And at the international races, they usually have mile marker signs at 5K. Boom, take a gel in every time you see a 5K. And that's usually a good fueling rate, regardless of your pace, your weight, and all that. But think about what you're obviously going to do on race day, if you need to buy more gels and things like that, to have that available to you. And just so that you're not scrambling, once you're packing and traveling and then looking for what you are used to in training. This is usually my goal is I carry about 4 gels with me, a couple salt stick electrolyte chews, and then I plan to pick up a couple more gels on course as an example. But think about, again, you might want some caffeine or some solids. So just plan out your race day fueling. The other thing that helps after the race, sometimes people don't think about fueling after the race, get your body temperature back in a stable place. Whether it's a hot or cold finish, wrapping yourself in those Mylar blankets or the jackets you get at the finish line helps you to regulate your body temperature and get your appetite back so you can more easily rehydrate and refuel. And getting protein in right away, ideally within 30 minutes, is the key. So I like to actually visualize and write out my post-race refueling plan. And in my final big long runs, I will actually practice some of this, like get in a water bottle, then some electrolytes, then some protein, maybe have a celebratory beverage, and so on and so forth. So think about your fueling from before the race, through the race, and after the race. I know, again, Maurten, I don't think it's on course at Tokyo, but if you do need a more detailed fueling guide, Maurten has been sponsoring a lot of the big marathon majors like Chicago and New York. So it's a popular product with a lot of our marathon runners. They actually have a whole guide on their website about what to get in before, during, and after the marathon. All right, pacing. So this is the marathon course. If you're not familiar, the final tip besides fueling and hydrating is pacing smart. So this is something you can practice your last couple long runs. Always, especially doing a full marathon, make sure you take the first 5K easy. Don't worry about your pace, especially on race day, because in Tokyo, it's the world's largest city. 40 million people live in Tokyo. It is the largest city in the world. And they have tons of buildings and high rises. So sometimes the GPS signal might get a little messed up and you don't want to rely on your watch. So don't worry about your pace in the first 5K, especially, just look at the race clocks, look at the 5K markers if they have them. And that way you can kind of have a backup plan in case your GPS signal gets a little bit chaotic. But I think most recent watches have been pretty good in general. But start easy, start in the blue or green zone and then build up into the yellow, orange, or red zone from a heart rate perspective. If you haven't figured out your heart rate zones, I'm happy to geek out with you one-on-one to dial in things a little bit better. Usually we recommend pacing starting at 75% of your max heart rate, building up to 85%. That keeps you below your anaerobic threshold so that you're burning more fat as a fuel source and you can last longer. If you're going for a negative split pacing strategy, usually my goal is to start at 80% or below of my max heart rate. And then in the second half of the race, I build up to 85% of my max heart rate. And every marathon I've done that in, I've basically negative split and had a great experience. So if you want to do that, that helps. If you don't use a heart rate monitor, I tell people focus on breathing. I did a whole video on asymmetric breathing. So if you've been following the training plan, you might have gotten this, but if you didn't, I'm happy to share this with you as well. Basically, you just count how many steps you take as you breathe out and how many steps you take as you breathe in. And if you can control your respiratory rate, you can control your pace. So that's a way to do this without actually using a heart rate monitor. You just make sure as you breathe out, 4 steps out, 3 steps in. That means your breathing is controlled versus if you're breathing in and out every 2 steps, you're probably running at your threshold, which is a little too fast for a marathon. The other thing I recommend is, besides running smart, is have fun, smile. There's things you can do strategically, like trying to follow the tangent line, the shortest path of the course. So you're not zigzagging too much or running on the shadier side of the road, or the sunny side if it's cold out. But smiling elevates your mood, elevates how you feel. You get energy from the crowds, you give it back, and that really helps you execute a good race day. Now, if you really want to geek out, I'm not going to go through this, but I have a big spreadsheet for everything. I might actually make a new one of this as an example for Chicago, but I'm looking at making a specific one for Tokyo. So if anyone wants to go through that, I'll be happy to schedule a one-on-one chat with you guys to walk you through putting together an ideal pacing plan. The other 2 tools we have for pacing plans, RunDot, we have a free 2-month trial of this. You can input any run you've done recently, like a 5K assessment. And based on your fitness numbers, it will pull in the Tokyo course, the Tokyo climate, the humidity, the temperature, and it'll give you a perfect pacing plan for race day. Obviously, if you use watches, some of them like Garmin especially has come out with a new, what they call Pace Pro feature, where they can pull in the Tokyo course and you can set how aggressive you want your positive or negative split pacing plan to be. And it will beep at you every mile marker. It'll tell you what to target to keep you on pace. I did this in Sydney this past year and it worked great. So it's a neat feature. If you're a Garmin user, I would recommend playing around with this on your final peak long runs. But again, if anyone has any questions about anything, fueling, hydration, pacing plans, final couple of weeks of training, feel free to schedule a chat with me. This is a QR code and we'll share a link. Happy to go through your individual training plans. And our Tokyo group is a much smaller group. So I like to provide a little bit more personalized support if that's what you would like. So you can connect with me on Garmin, Training Peaks, Strava, all those platforms. I can review how your training has been going, give you some final tips for the final couple of weeks, and then get you dialed in for race day. So looking forward to tracking you guys on race day. And if you do want to chat, one new thing we also have, I will be in our new WhatsApp chat group. We have one specifically for Tokyo. And so if you're traveling abroad and let's say your cell phone doesn't have text messaging included, this is a great app to use when traveling. And we will recommend this to all of our Tokyo athletes. We have a Tokyo specific group. So if you want to coordinate meetups, maybe plan a lunch, a dinner while you're in Tokyo, a tourist trip to do together, we have this group that you can join now. And within the Tokyo group, we'll be posting some more tips and information as well.
We would love it if you took a team picture.
Yes,
no
yeah,
pressure.
we'd love to find a good landmark to take a team photo. And speaking of good team photos in Tokyo, this is the start line, and we had somebody in the start line here very recently. So I'm going to turn it over to Coach Marcia, who has run Tokyo, and this is her providing some final tips for us from her 2024 Tokyo experience. So Marcia, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks. I'm Coach Marcia. I ran Tokyo Marathon in 2024, and I just want to go over a few marathon-specific bits of information that you'd want to consider before going out to Tokyo and during your trip there and from start to finish for the race. So first off, the race rules. As soon as you get access to the marathon program rules, which are available online, read through the entire thing as soon as possible. Tokyo as a city is a very rules intensive culture, and a lot of the rules for the race you really need to follow to a T because they can disqualify you for a number of things. So it'll help you inform your race if you read through everything. Ask questions if you have any questions. Don't take any chances. Don't make any guesses. We're here to answer any questions you have. So nutrition for the race itself. I'm going to kind of go back and forth between race and expo, etc. As Coach Chris mentioned, Pocari Sweat is the official electrolyte / energy beverage on the course. There's no Gatorade, so it's Pocari, it's water, and it's a whole smorgasbord of food products. So you can carry your own gels, you could carry your own mixed powders, and you can carry up to 2 500 milliliter factory sealed pouches or boxes of water or liquid. They are so specific about this. You can't bring like a plastic bottle or a bladder in a vest. Even if it's empty, you cannot bring something like that. It has to be factory sealed. So they will check you at security. So just if you can find a convenience store, which there are plenty of in Tokyo, practically every street corner has a convenience store, you'd be able to find, if you really need, a box of water or like a gel pouch or whatnot. You can bring small gels with you, like, Morton or whatever brand you like. Those are not considered liquid. They'll supply fruit, candies, glucose tablets, and these little red bean gel paste pouches, which are really tasty. So for the most part, there's going to be plenty to consume in terms of nutrition and hydration on the course. And I'm talking about 2 years ago. This was my experience. I know that last year it was a little bit of a hotter race, and people talked about, water being a little more scarce. So if you feel like you need to carry some extra water with you, you can bring 2 boxes with you. In terms of the merchandise, the pre-orders for any race merchandise to have delivered to the expo, I think, is over at this point. So you can do one of two things: either take your chances at the expo, and hopefully there will be still some ASICS gear left, or have it delivered to your hotel. Order here and have it delivered to your hotel when you arrive. Merchandise sells out quickly. They may or may not have it in the stores, the ASICS stores in Tokyo. What you do get, though, from the expo itself is a kind of a generic charity shirt. It's the one I'm wearing right now, actually. It'll just say charity and then Tokyo Marathon on it. And so if you really want to have just like a charity remembrance of your race, then you'll get one for free. Plus the participant shirt that they give out at the expo. So speaking of expo, it's very large. It takes up 2 floors of the expo center. There might be very long lines to wait in to pick up your packet on the top floor. And there are the expo booths at the bottom floor. If you show up very early on expo morning, the lines might be longer than later in the afternoon. So plan your trip accordingly, give yourself enough time. The volunteers at the expo, while many Japanese residents, especially if you're like millennial or younger, tend to speak English as a second language. Some of the older Japanese residents might not, but volunteers will wear little buttons that indicate what languages they speak. So if you do have questions at the expo, just look for the people wearing buttons that say English if you don't speak Japanese. It is a good idea to at least learn a few phrases in Japanese, though, for your trip out there. So the start line of the race, so now we're at race day. You have 7 hours total from the gun start until the finish line absolutely closes. Now, that doesn't mean a person has 7 hours to run the entire race, because if you put down that you are running a 6-hour race or 5.5, 6.5 hour race, you're probably going to be in the very, very, very last corral. So this isn't chip time. You do get a chip, but you still have to finish from the start of the gun time. In other words, if you're in the final corral and it starts a half hour after that initial gun goes off, you only have 6.5 hours, not 7. And the checkpoints along the way, which are about every 5 kilometers. If you're in the closer to the middle to back of the pack, you have to hit those at a certain time. Otherwise, you get pulled off the course and your race is over. So while going for a negative split is great if you plan to run it a lot faster than 5 hours, if you plan to run it slower than, say, 5.5 or 6 hours, go with a positive split. Basically, bank as much time as you can to make sure you get past those initial few checkpoints, because there is no grace period whatsoever. As soon as the clock hits a certain time, they'll pull up a rope and pull you off the course. So be very mindful of what your time is on the course. Keep an eye on your watch. And if you can, use the bathroom before the race, not during the course, especially the first few miles of the course. So speaking of course, it tends to be very crowded because the corrals don't have any space between them. It's basically just the corrals are there for seating the athletes. So once the gun goes off, the entire race goes off. So it's very crowded on the course. If you feel claustrophobic, try to run on the outside of the course. As you can see by the map, much of it is out and back. So you're sharing a street with people coming the opposite direction for much of it. It starts with a very slight downhill, and it's relatively flat, and it's got a few small rolling hills. It's entirely urban. You're basically surrounded by lots of skyscrapers for most of the race, for about the first 20 miles, really. And then again, toward the end, the roads are very pristine. They're very smooth. And make sure your shoes are up to date. If they have worn out outsoles, be careful running on these streets because the pavement has basically this, advanced type of water retaining cooling surface, and it tends to get kind of slick, especially at the aid stations. As for maybe what to wear, as Coach Chris said, the temperature can vary. It can be cool and in the 40s, which is kind of ideal for marathon running, or it could get to be quite warm. So you can always layer up and discard your layers at the start line. Make sure not to wear clothing that has very specific advertising for a business. Like if you have like a phone number and an address for a business on it, that won't be allowed on the course. Charity shirts should be allowed on the course though, so wear your T2 shirt with pride. Also, a fun tip would be to, instead of writing your name in English necessarily, or you can write your name in English on your shirt, but also include your name written in Japanese so that you can get some shout outs on the course. Also, here's a consideration. I mentioned the bathrooms, and to plan on skipping them in the first few miles if you plan to take if you're running at a maybe slower than 5.5 or 6 hour pace, because the portalets are placed pretty far from the course. They're not like right along the course. They're usually on a side street, and you have to run a couple of blocks to get to them. And obviously the time keeps ticking, so the run to the bathroom and back can be like up to a half mile. So if you can, go before the race, and just be mindful of how much hydration you're taking in. And the bathrooms at the start are really well organized. It's just one long line, and basically they queue you up so that the line moves really quickly, unlike some other majors where there are separate lines for every bathroom. In terms of etiquette, littering is just not allowed at all. If you have trash, if you have a gel pack or a cup in your hand, throw it out right there at the aid station. If not, hold on to it until you get to the next aid station, or give it to one of the many volunteers who happen to be holding plastic bags along the way. I'm not sure if they can disqualify you for littering, but it's a good idea just to not do it at all. Photos on course for the official photographer. It's not marathon photos. I think Tokyo has its own specific photographer, and I'm not entirely sure, but I think you get them free after the race, or maybe you do pay a small fee. But you'll have the on-course photographers. They're kind of hard to find. They'll just be kind of stationed along the side. So if you happen to be near a tourist attraction like the Sensoji Temple or the Sky Tree Tower or Tokyo Tower, there's a good chance that you'll have some good photo opportunities along those places, and plenty of them at the finish line too. And so speaking of finish line, the finish line is in Marunouchi near Ginza. Right when you get past the finish line, keep walking for quite a while. You're not supposed to stop and take photos right at the finish line. So collect your medal, collect your terry cloth poncho. There's a small refreshment table. You'll get a bag of nutrition, post-race water. There's no beer or anything like that at the finish line. There's not even really a finish line festival. It kind of ends and you can hang out afterwards, but it's not the same level of post-race party as some of the other majors. So yeah, after you cross the finish line, there's this long out and back that you'll have to just keep walking through in order to get to collect the poncho and the refreshments and whatnot. And then basically, as efficient as Tokyo is, they basically tear down the entire finish line right after the race is done. So like if you want to come back afterwards and take pictures, don't expect it to still be there. Let's see. Yeah, and this part isn't specific to the race itself, but more so in terms of travel. The transit system in Tokyo is really well connected, and if you just follow the colors of the different lines, you can get from place to place very easily. The start line is right off of like the Shinjuku train station, if I'm not mistaken. There'll be plenty of volunteers that will lead you in the right direction. And afterwards, after the finish line, there's another, there are plenty of train stations nearby. Tokyo Station is like one of the largest in the world, I believe. So you can get back to your hotel, whether you're staying at the finish line or at the start line, very easily. Here's a picture on the screen of the Tokyo start line. As you can see, the corrals are pretty crowded, as they are at most major marathons. Again, if you think time is a consideration, if you're closer to the middle or back of the pack, I would suggest getting to the front of that corral as much as close to the front as you possibly can, because every minute counts. Again, it takes close to a half hour for the entire field to cross the start line. And then if you can advance to the next slide, basically, oh, I skipped. Oh, okay, I guess not. Okay, that's right. So here's the finish line. Again, quite crowded. They want you to keep moving afterwards. It's a very celebratory, fun, beautiful course. And yeah, you've got, like I said, 7 hours total. And if you have any questions, I can answer them, or anyone else in the team who's run the course can tell you more about it. Yeah, so good luck to everybody.
Cool. Thank you, Marcia. Yeah, we're going to wrap up a recording here. We will answer a few questions and we'll stay on the line. But I think, like we mentioned earlier, if you guys have any questions, anything pops in your head later on, feel free to join that WhatsApp chat group, and we'll be posting some more kind of final tips and information there and answering questions. So feel free to take advantage of that if you want to get a hold of any of us for those final tips. But yeah, hopefully Tokyo will be a magical experience for you, running in the world's largest city with a country where marathon running is a huge part of their culture. If you're not familiar, there's a famous race called Ekiden, which is a relay race that corporate teams do, and the amount of marathon runners per capita, I think, in Japan is higher than almost anywhere else in the world. And so it's really, really, it's kind of like the Super Bowl for a lot of people in Japan, in Tokyo. So you'll be very well supported from start to finish. But yeah, good luck, everyone. And I'm going to end the recording and open it up to any final questions.